My sister stole my wedding dress, walked down the aisle, and married my fiancé. My mother applauded. She was always the better choice. My ex-husband smirked. You are just practice. Tears filled my eyes as I handed my sister a letter. She read it and screamed, "Tell me this isn't real." My lawyer stood up and said, "It's very real. My sister stole my wedding dress. She wore it, down the aisle, married my fiancé, in front of me." And my mom clapped. She clapped like she was watching a Broadway show. Like she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. She actually said she was always the better choice. Loud enough for everyone to hear. And Derek? Yeah, that's my ex-fiancé now. He looked at me before kissing my sister and said, "You were just practice." I just stood there, in a wrinkled dress from Target because mine was gone. I watched the whole thing. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I handed my sister a letter. She opened it. She read it. And then she screamed so loud the birds flew out of the trees. I'll get to that. But first, let me tell you how we got here. For starters, my family has always favored my sister, Clara. I swear from the moment we were born, I was the backup plan. The extra. The other daughter. Clara was the pretty one. The smart one. The one with the perfect hair and perfect smile. The one my mom never stopped talking about. I was just there. I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, there were signs. My mom used to joke, Derek and Clara would have made such cute babies. Even after Derek and I got engaged, she said that. People thought she was kidding. She wasn't. But Derek was mine. At least I thought he was. We'd been together for 4 years. Built the life. Got a dog. Started a business together. Picked out a house. Planned a wedding. I thought we were happy. Our wedding was set for a Saturday in May. Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful venue. Outdoor ceremony. The works. I spent months putting it all together. Paid for most of it myself, too. Derek's family didn't have much money, and my mom said they weren't about to waste their savings on me, so I covered what I could. It was supposed to be the best day of my life. Instead, my sister made it her own. Here's how it happened. The night before the wedding, I stayed at an Airbnb near the venue. My dress, a custom lace gown I saved for over a year to afford, was hanging up in the closet. I checked on it 5 times before bed. It was fine. When I woke up, it was gone. I thought I was losing my mind. I tore the place apart. Called the owner. Checked the security cameras. And there she was. Clara. At 3:17 in the morning. Letting herself in with the spare key mom had. Pulling the dress off the hanger. Leaving with it stuffed in a garment bag like it was just any other piece of clothing. I called Derek. No answer. I called my mom. She sighed and said, "Maybe it's for the best." I called Clara. Straight to voicemail. That's when it hit me. They weren't hiding it. They weren't ashamed. They wanted me to know. And they wanted me to show up and see it happen. I should have stayed home. I should have canceled the whole thing. But I didn't. I don't even know why. Maybe I just needed to see it with my own eyes. I went to the venue. Bought a cheap white dress from Target on the way. Pulled my hair back into a ponytail. Put on some mascara. I was beyond humiliation at that point. I figured if they were going to play this game, I might as well sit front row. I walked in and there they were. Clara. In my dress. Holding my bouquet. Smiling like she didn't just stab me in the back and twist the knife. And Derek. Standing there. Looking smug. Like he had won some kind of prize. The ceremony started like nothing was wrong. People whispered. I heard someone say, "Wasn't she supposed to marry him?" Someone else said, "I thought this was her wedding." No one stopped it. Not even the officiant. He just read through the script. Clara and Derek said their vows. Exchanged rings. Laughed. Kissed. And through all of it, my mom clapped from her seat like she was watching fireworks. It was surreal. Like I wasn't really there. Like I was watching someone else's nightmare. Then it was over. They were married. And that's when I walked up and handed Clara the letter. I didn't say anything. I didn't make a speech. I just handed it to her. She opened it, read it, and lost her mind. Started screaming, crying, yelling at Derek. Everyone went silent. People turned to watch. Cameras started recording. You know how people are. My lawyer stood up from his seat in the 3rd row and said, "Clear as day. It's very real." And that's when the screaming really started. Now, you're probably wondering what was in the letter. I'll get to that. But just know, they thought they were playing me. They thought they stole my life. They thought they left me standing there with nothing. They didn't know I was the one holding the match. And I was about to light the whole thing on fire. She kept screaming like she had just opened a letter full of poison. People started gathering around her, trying to see what it said. Derek grabbed the paper out of her hands, read it once, twice, and then his face dropped like he had been punched in the stomach. I stood there and watched the color drain right out of him. It was beautiful. Mom started hissing at me from her chair. "What did you do? What did you do?" Over and over like some broken toy. I ignored her. I wasn't here for her. I was here for them to feel exactly what they thought I'd feel when I showed up and saw what they'd done. See, the letter was simple. It wasn't pages and pages. Just a few lines. Enough to hit where it hurt. I wrote, "By now, you've probably noticed Derek's bank account is empty. And the house you thought you were moving into? Sold. I transferred the business into my name last month. Every penny Derek thought was his is gone. Congratulations on your marriage. You're both broke." But that wasn't the twist. The twist was that I knew about them long before this day. They thought they were slick. Thought they were sneaking around behind my back. I found the text first. Derek's phone lighting up on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. Clara's name with a heart next to it. I only had to scroll for about 30 seconds before I realized my own sister was sending him things that no sister should ever send her sibling's fiancé. I didn't say anything that day. I didn't scream. Didn't throw his phone. I took screenshots. Sent them to myself. Quiet. Calm. I let it go on. I wanted to see how far they'd take it. Turns out, all the way. They were meeting at hotels, apparently, in my car, at his office. I knew about every single one. I tracked his location. I checked the security cameras at work. They didn't even try to hide. They thought I was too stupid to figure it out. But I wasn't. So instead of blowing it up right then and there, I did what Derek always said I couldn't do. I made a plan. And it worked like this. Derek and I owned a business together. A marketing company. Small but successful. I handled the paperwork, the taxes, the legal side of things. He never paid attention to the details. He was too busy playing CEO on Instagram and taking credit for my work. Little by little, I moved the important stuff into my name. Transferred ownership. Shifted the bank accounts. Disconnected his access. By the time the wedding rolled around, Derek didn't legally own a single thing in the company. But he didn't know that. Clara thought she was walking into my wedding and stealing my life. What she really did was marry a man with no job, no money, and no house. The house? Oh yeah. Sold it. Quietly. Right before the wedding. Derek thought the paperwork he signed was refinancing documents. It wasn't. I paid off the mortgage, took the profits, and closed the account. The sale went through the day before the wedding. Title transferred. Clean and done. So when Derek and Clara left the wedding, they weren't going home. Home was gone. But the best part? I wasn't finished yet. After Clara screamed and Derek turned pale, people started whispering. The guests didn't know what was happening exactly, but they knew it was bad. You could feel it. That shift in the air. That heavy, uncomfortable silence. Everyone trying to figure out if they should stay or pretend they suddenly had somewhere else to be. That's when Clara did something I wasn't expecting. She ran at me. Full speed. In my dress. Screaming. "What did you do?" she yelled, over and over, until her voice cracked. And I just said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "You made your choice. Now live with it." Security pulled her back. Yeah, we had actual security there. Not for drama, just because the venue required it. But the guy had been watching from the corner, and the second she got too close, he stepped in. Mom rushed over like she was about to slap me. I just turned my back on her. The woman who raised me to think I wasn't good enough. The woman who clapped when my sister married the man I was supposed to marry. I could hear her behind me, calling me ungrateful. Selfish. Cruel. Cruel. Me. I was cruel? They stole my fiancé, my wedding, my dress, and somehow, I was the villain? At that point, I didn't even care what she thought. Let her rot in her bitterness. She made her choice, too. And just when I thought the day couldn't get weirder, someone else showed up. It was Derek's ex. Before me. They dated for years, but he dumped her when things got too serious. I hadn't seen her in forever, but there she was, standing outside the venue with this smug little smile like she had been watching the whole thing unfold through the window. "Wow," she said. "Better than reality TV." She handed me a coffee. Just like that. Like we were old friends. And I took it. Why not? I figured I earned it. But here's the thing. This story isn't over yet. Not even close. Because Derek and Clara thought they hit rock bottom that day. They didn't know how much farther they still had to fall. And I was more than ready to give them the push. Clara stopped screaming for a second. Just long enough to whisper something to Derek. I couldn't hear it, but I watched his face. Whatever she said hit him like a truck. He started shaking his head, his jaw clenching so tight, I thought his teeth might snap. And then, out of nowhere, he turned on her. Right there, in front of everyone. "You said she didn't know," he hissed. "You said you handled it." I didn't need to know the rest. It was written all over their faces. They thought they were playing me, but they were playing each other, too. Here's what I found out later. Derek wasn't just cheating on me with Clara. He was cheating on Clara with someone else. Multiple someone else's, actually. One of them was a waitress from his favorite bar downtown. Another was his coworker. And apparently there was even some random girl from a bachelor party trip to Myrtle Beach. And Clara knew. She knew, and she still married him. Because, as it turns out, she didn't just want Derek. She wanted to beat me. She wanted to take what was mine, just to prove she could. But there's more. The morning of the wedding, after I saw the security footage of Clara stealing my dress, I made another call. To the venue. See, I paid for everything. The rental, the catering, the flowers. And I made sure the contract was in my name. So when I told them I no longer approved of the event, they listened. But I didn't tell them to cancel the wedding. Oh no. I told them to leave everything exactly as planned. But instead of sending the final payment through, I had the bank reverse it. So while they were saying their vows, the venue was already processing the cancellation of their deposit. The caterers? They packed up and left right after the ceremony. Half the food never even made it out of the kitchen. I heard the cake got boxed up and returned to the bakery. And the honeymoon? Derek bragged about it for months. 2 weeks in Italy. First class. Private tours. 5-star hotels. Yeah, I canceled that too. And since it was booked on the company credit card, and Derek no longer had access to the business, guess who got hit with the fees? Not me. I watched them scramble when they figured it out. Clara's makeup running down her face. Derek pacing like he was going to tear his hair out. My mom standing between them, trying to calm them down, acting like none of this was her fault. And then another surprise walked in. This time, it was the cops. Not for me. For Derek. Turns out, when you play fast and loose with your taxes for 3 years straight and leave all the paperwork to your fiancé, who suddenly isn't interested in covering for you anymore, things catch up real quick. The IRS was already sniffing around. I just gave them a little nudge in the right direction. Sent over some files. Highlighted a few errors he made. Attached some records with his name on them, and stepped back. The officers didn't arrest him on the spot. It wasn't that dramatic. But they did pull him aside, had a nice long conversation with him by the fountain while Clara sobbed into her bouquet. And when they left, Derek wasn't smiling anymore. People started leaving after that. Quietly. Awkwardly. Nobody wanted to be part of the disaster. You could feel the embarrassment in the air. Like the whole room just wanted to pretend they hadn't witnessed any of it. Half the guests didn't even say goodbye. They just slipped out the back. And me? I stayed. I watched every second. I drank the champagne they left on the table. I ate the last piece of bread from the basket. I sat back and soaked it all in. And then, just when I thought the day had given me everything it possibly could, I got a text. From Clara's ex. The one she left behind when Derek started sniffing around. The same guy who'd messaged me a couple times after they broke up, telling me to watch my back. He wrote, "Nice work. Wanna meet for drinks?" And I couldn't help it. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I looked over at Clara, wiping snot off her chin in my dress, and Derek, sitting with his head in his hands, and thought, why not? After all, I had nothing else planned that night. But like I said, it wasn't over. Not even close. Because the real twist? I wasn't the only one Derek owed money to. And I wasn't the only one Clara had crossed. Turns out, while they were so busy trying to steal my life, they forgot about the trail of people they burned along the way. And those people? They were ready to talk. The difference was I gave them a microphone. Derek's face was already pale, but when the second letter got passed to him, his hands started shaking. I hadn't planned on handing it over so soon, but since Clara was still sobbing into my dress like a child, I figured I'd speed things up. I wrote that one just for him. Short and simple. "The loan shark you borrowed from called me. Don't worry. I gave him your new address." And that was it. That was the final crack. He crumpled the paper in his fist and spun around on Clara. "You said you paid him off." She wiped her face and shrieked. "I thought I did. I gave you the money to do it. You gave me $3 grand. I owed him 10. Derek barked, and now everyone could hear them. The guests who hadn't already bailed were all standing there, watching like they'd stumbled into a reality show filming. Plates clinking, chair scraping, whispers rolling through the room like a wave. Nobody even tried to pretend they weren't listening anymore. "You told me you handled it," Clara shouted. "And you told me she didn't know about any of this." Derek shot back, jerking his chin at me like I was the one who ruined their day. I stood there quietly, arms crossed, not bothering to hide my smile. I didn't need to add anything. They were doing all the work themselves. The lies started peeling off them like dead skin. Every secret, every half-truth, every scheme they thought they were getting away with just unraveled right there on the dance floor. "Wait." Mom cut in, her voice shaking now. "What loan shark?" They both ignored her. "You said the house was ours." Clara spat, her mascara streaked down to her chin. Derek laughed. Actually laughed. "Ours? You mean the one she sold?" "Yeah, real solid investment, babe." Then Clara turned and pointed at me. Like this was somehow my fault. "You ruined everything," she said. "You couldn't just let us be happy, could you?" That's when I finally spoke up. "You weren't happy," I said. "You were never happy. You wanted to win. You wanted to take something from me, and you did. But the thing you took..." I looked at Derek. "It's worthless. He's broke. He's a liar. And now you get to keep him. Congratulations." The silence after that was thick. Like the air itself didn't want to move. And then, of course, my mom. never missing an opportunity to embarrass herself, decided it was the perfect time to throw her support behind the losing team. She worked so hard to make this happen, Mom said to me, glaring like I was the villain. You didn't have to humiliate them. I actually laughed. Didn't I? Because what did she expect? For me to sit there and clap while they ripped my life apart? For me to cry and go home and let them play house in the ruins of everything I built? No. No chance. People started leaving in bigger groups after that, whispering, avoiding eye contact. A few stayed behind. Derek's best man tried to pull him aside, but Derek shrugged him off. Clara's bridesmaids ditched her completely. I watched them pick up their bags and leave without a word. The DJ stopped the music. The lights came up. Someone turned off the champagne fountain. And there it was. The end of the show. But not quite. Because while Derek and Clara stood there trying to figure out who to blame, the venue manager came over and tapped Derek on the shoulder. I couldn't hear exactly what was said, but I saw Derek's face go from pale to red to purple in about 5 seconds flat. Then the manager looked at me. Just confirming you don't want to pay the remaining balance, he asked. Nope, I said. Bill it to them. Already did, he said with a nod, and walked away. And that was the final nail. Derek knew they didn't have the money. Clara knew her savings went to that loan shark. Mom just sat down in a chair and stared at the floor like if she stayed quiet enough, maybe she could disappear. After that, Derek stormed off. Didn't say goodbye. Just shoved past a couple of servers and left. Clara stayed behind, crying into her hands. At one point, she looked up at me and whispered, "Please help me." Help her? The same sister who stole my fiancé? Who let me spend months planning a wedding she knew she was going to hijack? Who smiled at me over dinner knowing she was sneaking around with the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with? Help her? I walked past her. Didn't even answer. In the parking lot, Derek's ex was still waiting by her car. When she saw me coming, she held up that coffee again and waved me over. I wasn't kidding, she said. Come on. First round's on me. And I did. We sat at this dive bar a few blocks away. I left my phone on the table, watching it light up with texts from Mom and Clara. Apologies. Begging. Threats. And finally, silence. The bartender overheard bits of the story and kept sliding us free shots. Some guy at the end of the bar told me I should write a book. Derek's ex joked that we should start a support group. For the first time in years, I felt okay. Not happy. Not sad. Just free. Like I'd finally stepped out of a room I didn't even know was suffocating me. And yeah, later that night, lying in bed at the hotel, staring at the ceiling, it hit me. All of it. The betrayal. The wasted years. The absolute circus my life had become. I thought I'd cry. Thought I'd feel empty. But I didn't. I felt like I could finally breathe. People love to talk about family. About how blood is thicker than water. About forgiveness. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes your family is the one holding the knife. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away before they finish the job. Mom tried to fix things after that. Sent me long emails about how we can work past this. How family is forever. How she didn't mean to hurt me. I never replied. Last I heard, Derek and Clara were living with her, sharing a room like teenagers, trying to scrape together enough money to pay the venue. The business is still mine. The house sold. The bank account full. I even started seeing someone new. Someone who doesn't know Clara. Doesn't know Derek. Doesn't know any of the mess I left behind. Feels good to be anonymous for once. If I've learned anything, it's that sometimes the only way to win is to let people ruin themselves. And I don't feel guilty. Not even a little. They built the fire. I just watched it burn.